between the 11th of December, when it was first given emergency use authorization, and this report on the 21st of August from the FDA was saying that millions of doses have been safely administered. I'll let you decide whether the information that's now been released indicates safe administration, as we just look at some of those potential associated conditions. I'm just really quite bemused. And also, we had our politicians and medical leaders telling us that this vaccine's safe and effective all this time. But I can only assume, well, I simply don't know. This data was available to the FDA. Was this data available to the regulatory authorities in the UK, in Germany, in Canada, in Australia? I would assume so. Finally, has this changed the risk-benefit analysis of giving vaccines compared to the condition? Well, Austria, this is the relevant minister, senior politician in Austria. The law passed in January for mandatory vaccinations, in force since early February for a mandatory vaccination in Austria, which I remember recovered at the time. She now says it's not proportionate because the relatively mild symptoms experienced by most people who contract Omicron. So it looks like Pfizer and the FDA concluded that the risk-benefit analysis was favourable way back in the early part of 2021. We could argue about that, given that there seems to be 1,223 associated deaths from an unknown number of Pfizer vaccinations in the first 3 months. I would question that now. But now, with Omicron, because it's so much less... people are getting so much less sick, so much lower hospitalisation rates and lower death rates from Omicron. Not gone away, but much less. Surely that's complete. Well, that has, I think we can state as a fact, that has changed the risk-benefit analysis. So really, governments like Austria need to be reviewing the situation against the increased risks of vaccination, in this case the Pfizer vaccination. We don't have the full details on the other one. We need to compare that now, risk that we are now learning about due to this Freedom of Information Act. Activity, and compare that to the known risk from Omicron. It's maybe time for the risk-benefit analysis has changed. Maybe that needs to change through into policy. But I must say, I just feel so, why on earth does it take the signature from a judge? Really, what is that about? So there you go. We've learned things here that we didn't know at the time. At the time, we were taking the word of these senior people. The other thing about this is why hasn't the mainstream media doesn't seem to have taken this up at all? I would have thought this is a complete scandal, perhaps on a par with Watergate or Perfumo crisis or whatever scandal you have in your country. It doesn't seem to be taken up. Of course, everyone's to some extent rightly preoccupied with the war now, but there's still plenty of mental capacity in these countries to ask sensible questions, I would have thought, and the mainstream media just don't seem to be taking this up as far as I can see. So there we are. That's the situation as I've worked it out so far. For a long time, and was again recently. But there's times where you don't manage to save someone's life. Of course. And that's kind of acceptable in a sense, because men and women are mortal. Of course we are. Even children die sometimes. So that happens, but if it's something that I've caused, then that's a bit of a different thing. And there has been times where I've reflected on interventions that I have carried out and come to consider that perhaps accelerated someone's death. Now, I was probably doing that for the absolutely right reasons, I would hope. And there are times where it's acceptable. So sometimes we give terminal patients analgesia, painkillers, knowing that may well accelerate their death, and that can be acceptable for quality of life. But to actually do something that does harm to people that are otherwise healthy, you could argue it is a fundamental breach of the Hippocrates idea that first do no harm.